If you find my cases interesting and you want to support me, then please head over to my Patreon page, which is Miss Borderline. I do enjoy creating these videos and podcasts for you. I do cover child murder and neglect cases, as I believe their voices are not always heard, and even their names sometimes get lost in their stories. So I want to continue to do that. I want to continue to be a voice for them and remember them and all the other victims I cover in my cases. So becoming a patron will support me in getting these stories heard, and you will get exclusive access to upcoming cases. You get priority for case suggestions. If you want me to cover something, just let me know and I'll do it. You'll be number one. Named credit at the end of all the videos. So if you want to see your name flashing up at the end of videos, by all means become a patron. And not forgetting 5% off, that's 5% off all my merch, which can be found at the official Bonfire site, and it's Miss Borderline. I'll put up some links for that as well. So I do put a lot of time and effort and resources into my videos, and your support will help me continue making these videos for you, but also to get the better equipment that we need to reduce the amount of time of editing and uploading, so I can bring you better quality videos, and I'll also be able to upload them a bit more frequently as well. So at the moment I do not release videos religiously on a Wednesday or a Sunday. I upload them when I can, basically. So thank you. God bless you. Welcome to my channel. If you're a new viewer or whether you're a returning viewer, I appreciate y'all. I just want to take a moment to ask you to like, subscribe, comment even if you find this particular case interesting. Particularly subscribe, because that helps me a hell of a lot, and I would really appreciate it. Firstly, I apologise if there's any background noise that you can hear, particularly my little rescue dog Cindy, who's sat sort of down beside me. Now this is a particular heinous murder of a young baby who didn't even make it to his first birthday. He lost his life on Christmas Day 2020. A day for children, a day for joy, family, celebration. Awful case, so viewer discretion is advised. This is not for the faint-hearted. I know it's not for everyone, but it does need to be heard. So please watch something else if this would be too triggering for you. I won't be offended. This case takes us to the UK, quite close to where I'm actually living now. It takes us to Derbyshire, and this is a case of little Finlay Boden. My heart goes out to all who knew and loved Finlay, and may he rest in your hearts forever. Now, I'm going to tell you the sad truth of Finlay Boden. Stephen Boden met Shannon Marsden when he was 24 years old and Shannon was 17. A little bit of an age gap. Nothing too big. I mean, she was of legal age. Now, Boden at 24, when he met Shannon, he was already making a name for himself with the police. He already had 22 convictions under his belt when he met Shannon. Now, he was an avid user of cannabis, which he reportedly started using at 9 years old, and had notable anger issues. And he'd already been convicted of domestic violence. Now, Marsden, she wasn't without her own difficulties either. Now, she came from a turbulent, quite an unstable family life. I mean, she was drinking alcohol at age 9 and smoking cannabis at age 10. So that gives a little bit of a snapshot of just what her family life was like. Now, she left her family home at quite a young age to live with her relatives, although she remained in regular contact with her mother. Now, it appears the pair had a common interest when they met, and that was smoking cannabis, appearing not to be recreational at all, but it was quite heavy cannabis use. It was all day and it was every day. The pair settled down together and they lived with each other in Chesterfield, Old Whittington. It's a beautiful place in the UK, not far from where I am. And then they lived together, they smoked cannabis. That was their, like I said before, that was their common interest. It's probably what drew them to each other. However, on the 17th of February 2020, baby Finlay was born. Now, due to the couple's extensive cannabis use and the fact that their home was quite messy and dirty, social services identified that Finlay was a child at risk and put a child protection plan in place. The pair did very little, if nothing, to comply with this plan. In fact, some would say they were pretty damn defiant. They had no respect for authority. They didn't engage with social services in putting the safeguarding issues in place to protect Finlay. And as a result of them not complying and not engaging with social services, baby Finlay was removed from the home quite soon after birth, putting him in the care system. He was put in a loving family home. Now, in the UK, safeguarding is taken very seriously, and wherever possible, the ideal solution would be to keep the child within the family unit. Now, me personally, I've worked closely with safeguarding bodies in my professional career. So for Finlay to be removed from the home, it must have been quite an unsafe environment, and Finlay must have been at significant risk to harm. Now, like I said, Finlay was placed in a happy, wanted home, and he started to thrive. He was a bubbly, smiley, beautiful, bouncing baby boy. He thrived in the care of the system, foster parents. You can see videos. I'll put up videos of just how he was actually thriving. But, however, Boden and Marsden decided they wanted him back. This was in 2020, and the UK had just gone into a COVID lockdown. Now, the COVID lockdown in the UK meant that social workers, their home visits and doing checks were quite restricted. And more importantly, they didn't even do any unannounced visits. So when Marsden and Boden put forward that they wanted to try to get baby Finlay back into their care, there wasn't actually any home visits as such. All they did was they tidied up the flat, tidied up the home, sorry, not a flat, a house. They tidied it up a bit and sent in photographs. The court allocated an independent guardian via CAFCAS to Finlay's case. Now, who are CAFCAS? So CAFCAS is an acronym for the Children and Family Court Advisory and Support Service. Now, they're a non-departmental public body whose aim is to promote the welfare of children and families involved in proceedings within the family court. This is according to the bibsolicitors.co.uk website. Marsden and Boden started to engage with the services after sending in their photographs of how tidy their home was. They did up little Finlay's bedroom. It looked picture perfect. And they were allowed eventually, they also, before I just go on to that bit, they also told the welfare system in the UK that they had stopped smoking the cannabis. They'd stopped smoking, they'd turned their life around, they wanted Finlay back. So the pair were allowed supervised visits. They had 16 sessions at an hour each. So that's, just take note, this is just 16 hours of supervised visits with Finlay. Now, the feedback from these supervised visits was that Marsden ensured that Finlay was in the shade when they were out together. The social worker allocated to the case also noted that, Marsden was very empathetic towards Finlay. She held his hand when he was in the pushchair, which the social worker described as a natural response from a caring parent. Things started to progress after these 16 hours of supervised visits, and the pair went to court on the 1st of October 2020, where a hearing was heard to decide whether Finlay could return to Marsden and Boden. Now, this court hearing, which I said happened on the 1st of October 2020, because of the COVID lockdown, it was conducted over the telephone. Like previously mentioned, Boden and Marsden reported that they had stopped using cannabis. The photographs of their clean and tidy home were shown to the judge. The local authority said that yes, Finlay should return gradually to his parents' care. But obviously that's the goal of, social services in the UK. The goal is, if possible, if safe, then the child should be with the natural parents and in the family home. Now, they proposed that there should be a transition plan, which is pretty normal. I've done them myself, of about over 4 months. Yeah. So it was proposed at first Finlay would stay with his carers and only see his parents during the day. Now, initially for an hour and a half, building up to about 5 hours. Then he would be able to stay like on a Saturday night overnight, and etc, etc. So it was a gradual transition for Finlay to be safely reintegrated into the home of Marsden and Boden. If this plan was to happen, Derbyshire Local Authority Social Services said that by mid-January 2021, he would be in Marsden and Boden's full-time care. It would also, this gradual process was also to ensure that his time spent with Marsden and Boden was to make sure that he was safe. And they also said they wanted regular drug testing. Now, Cafcass had nominated a representative for Finlay, and she also was on this telephone call, not turned up in court, it was a telephone call, to give her side of the story. Now, I'm not going to mention her name, but she, who had only seen Finlay once, as reported in the media, and that was over video call, she suggested that this transition period back to, I'm not even going to say parents, back to Boden and Marsden should be cut down to only span over a period of 8 weeks. I don't know why, I don't know how, but the judge agreed within just 2 hours of deliberation that that course of action would be more appropriate. So instead of the 4 months gradual, it was now cut down to 8 weeks. Wow. Needless to say, Finlay was returned to the full-time custody of Boden and Marsden, and this was just 39 days before they would eventually kill him. So once Finlay was back with the pair, they disengaged from social services, from Derbyshire Social Services, and Finlay at the point of return, was being physically abused on the daily. He was neglected, he was surrounded by drug use and filth in the home. The pair did everything they can to avoid social services and their visits. They didn't comply with the plans that were in place. They continued to smoke cannabis, and they even went as far as going out with Finlay 6 to 7 hours a day just to avoid visits from social workers. There were a couple of unannounced visits, and on one particular unannounced visit by a social worker from Derbyshire Council, she actually turned up and witnessed Marsden and Boden at the bottom of the front garden doing a drug deal outside their house. There was another social worker, I'm not going to mention her name, who was actually the last professional to see Finlay alive. And when she visited the home of Boden and Marsden, there was no one responding to her knock, so she peered through the window, the front room window, and she could see Finlay alone, asleep on the sofa, with no adults around. He was dead a month later. On the 21st of December 2020, there was a scheduled social worker visit arranged. Now, Boden and Marsden cancelled it, saying Finlay had contracted COVID, so they couldn't come. According to research and the media, they didn't follow up on this. They didn't say, oh, he's got COVID, okay, so let's do like a video call, or, we can do social distancing. As far as what I've researched, none of this kind of happened, and it was just left at that. Now, on Christmas Day 2020, it was at 2:27 a.m. in the morning, Boden and Marsden made a call to paramedics because Finlay had stopped breathing. Now, Boden later told a relative that the couple didn't call an ambulance for at least an hour because they wanted to buy some more cannabis and quickly hide all their drug stash, whatever. So they put off actually calling paramedics to come to Finlay's aid. Now, Detective Inspector Steve Shaw of Derbyshire Police said they knew they were responsible for Finlay's injuries, and instead of doing the right thing and taking Finlay to get urgent medical care, they took him shopping in Chesterfield Town Centre as though nothing was wrong. In actual fact, Finlay was dying.
Today we have seen a mother and father jailed for what is quite simply an incomprehensible crime. Over the course of little more than a month, Shannon Marsden and Stephen Boden assaulted their son Finlay, leaving him with 57 fractured bones across his tiny body. The heartbreaking reality is that Finlay's last days would have been spent in immense pain, a fact that would have been abundantly clear to both parents. They knew that they were responsible for those injuries, and instead of doing the right thing and taking Finlay to get urgent medical care, they took him shopping in Chesterfield Town Centre. They conspired between them to ensure that no professional would see Finlay and keep their awful crimes a secret. But we now know the truth, and they have paid the price with their liberty.
Christmas Eve, the day before they called paramedics, there is CCTV of the pair wheeling Finlay in his pram around Chesterfield Town Centre. Now, I'm going to go on in a moment and explain just the horrific amount of injuries that this poor baby had suffered. And to think, a day before he died, they were wheeling him around in the town centre. He must have been, when you hear the horrific injuries he suffered, you're going to say to yourself, what the hell? When paramedics were called to the home on that Christmas morning, they could see the horrific injuries. Abuse. They recognised it as abuse straight away. Now, a post-mortem examination found, I'm just making sure you're going to hear this right, 71, that's 71 individual bruises and cuts. He had 57 broken bones, which included his shoulder, shin bone, pelvis and ankle, and he also had burn marks on him. This baby was 10 months old. Jurors, when it all went to court, they went to Derby Crown Court, they saw the footage of the two burns. Experts said on the witness stand that one of the burns could have been from a hot, flat surface, and the other was probably from a cigarette lighter flame or a cigarette. The inside of little Finlay's mouth was torn. He also had a spiral fracture in one femur, which is usually caused by like a twist, if someone's twisting the bone, and a broken tibia in Finlay's lower leg was consistent with being pinned and grabbed and twisted by the ankle. Now, the court heard that the baby's cause of death was multiple episodes of non-accidental blunt trauma. Now, in addition to this, he had something called osteomyelitis, which is a painful bone infection. He also had sepsis and pneumonia. This baby was frigging suffering. Now, I can't believe that all these injuries were on this poor child, and some of them were historic. It's not as if all this happened today. These were historical bone breaks. Historical. Marsden and Boden did not seek any medical attention for this baby. So he suffered with broken ribs, broken leg, broken arms, broken pelvis for days. Of Marsden police, which after she was arrested on a suspicion of murder. Now, the court heard her excuse was that she said, oh, well, it wasn't me. Boden mostly cared for Finlay. He did the bathing, feeding, changing him. And she even had the gall to tell the interviewer that she'd not even noticed Finlay's injuries, despite post-mortem examination finding some of them dated back weeks. And she made the comment, I think it's technically my fault because I didn't see any injuries, she told detectives. Wow, talk about shifting blame. Impact collision, like a car crash or from a great height. These awful injuries that Finlay had sustained. I mean, the prosecutor in the case, Mary Pryor, said these injuries would have prevented him from eating, causing him to lose significant amounts of weight. She also said Finlay was made to sleep in, bedding stained with blood and vomit. At the home, they found out-of-date milk formula and bottles and bottles of empty Calpol. Now, Calpol in the UK, in case you're listening in from the USA or another country, Calpol is like a paracetamol. It's liquid form for young children and babies. And they found empty bottles of this. So possibly they could have been dosing him up with that. Now, the judge said that injuries could have only they've got neighbours by each side of them, but no one heard Finlay cry or never heard him scream in pain because, oh God, this is going to be difficult to hear. The two of them, like the judge said, acted together, so one would put their hand over Finlay's mouth to keep him from screaming in pain, to keep him quiet, while the other one physically abused him. Oh, it just gets worse. So in an effort to lighten the mood, oh my God, your son just died, and you're talking about putting his pushchair up on eBay. Now, the pair were questioned, interviewed by the police and released on bail. Now, the following day, which would have been Boxing Day, they was at a relative's home for the celebrations. Don't know how that worked out. The couple were even heard laughing and joking around. And when Marsden went back to visit Finlay's body in hospital in the chapel arrest, which takes us now to the 11th of January 2021, after his body was released to chapel arrest, she was overheard saying, "His dad's battered him to death. I didn't protect him." Too damn right you didn't. Boden, he admitted when he was taking him to interview, he said that, "Oh my God, I may have rocked Finlay too hard." Explanations of the injuries, poor little Finlay, was that they said that the injuries inflicted to his face, cutting of the inside of the mouth, he did it by hitting himself with his rattle, and even blamed his broken ribs on the dog. On the effing dog. Later, in further interviews, Marsden said that it was Boden that had inflicted all the injuries on her son. Police weren't having none of it. The pair were initially released on bail. The conditions of their bail, they were not supposed to have any contact with each other. But Boden said that he continued a relationship with They thankfully were rearrested again. him. Now, from Kafkas said, possible to say whether a longer transition plan would have prevented Finlay's death. What led to his death was the ability of his parents to deceive everyone involved about their love for him and their desire to care for him. I'll leave that with you. Now, the pair go to court, and quite surprisingly, I don't know how they do this, but they pled not guilty. The counts were child murder, child cruelty, and causing or allowing the death of a child. They both pled not guilty. The trial went on for months. In fact, I think it took 14 days of deliberation for the jury to actually come to a decision. Now, the judge said they showed no remorse and that they conspired with each other to conceal the abuse of Finlay. The trial was so traumatising for the jury that the judge excused them for ever having to do jury service again in the future.
Neither of you have shown any remorse at all for what you have done. Weighing up these factors, the minimum term in your case, Stephen Boden, will be 29 years. From that, you must have deducted the number of days you have already spent in custody, which I'm told is 519 days. Please can Stephen Boden be taken down. Weighing up these factors, the minimum term in your case, Shannon Marsden, will be 27 years. From that, you must have deducted the number of days you've already spent in custody, which I'm told is 519 days. Please
Boden, he was sentenced to 29 years, life term, minimum of 29 years. And Marsden was also given a life term of 27 years minimum. Now, do you think that was just? Do you think Kafkas or Derbyshire Local Authority could have done more for Finlay? Would this abuse of Finlay have been stopped before his death if the UK wasn't in COVID lockdown? Like, subscribe, comment, and I pray Finlay is in a better place where he's not subject to the horrific abuse, free from pain, and in the heart of those who loved him.